They've completely destroyed their revenue streams, yet they have dollar-based debts. And that's happened to everybody, whether it's the Indonesian palm oil producer or the Russian nickel miner. They've all got the same problem. So you've massively collapsed dollar cash flows around the world.
Bitcoin then suffered a tremendous bear market, and then I bought in again. So if you go back to this narrative that I've been telling you, the global financial system is broken. People are not able to participate. The only answer the central banks have for this mess, so everybody takes on more debt. The only way the central banks have to try and keep this ship going and not sinking is printing more money, which is making the situation worse.
Where foreign companies have borrowed, that's not foreign sovereigns, that's foreign corporations. So we've got this huge amount of borrowing that's out there that requires cash flow. So if you think about, at another level, you think about Saudi's balance sheet. Well, as an economy, they plan for dollar revenues from oil. Well, when oil goes to, where is it today, $28, well, that's a 50% reduction in what they were. Now, oil may be at $28, but again, a lot of this is bouncing around. Let's call it the blended rate will be about $15 over this period of time. I mean, they've completely destroyed their revenue streams, yet they have dollar-based debts. And that's happened to everybody, whether it's the Indonesian palm oil producer or the Russian nickel miner. They've all got the same problem. So you've massively collapsed dollar cash flows around the world. And that creates a big problem in its own right. Everybody else says the Fed are printing money, rates are at zero, maybe they go negative, therefore the dollar collapses. It doesn't work that way. Currency world is a relative world, and there's a supply and demand issue. And we live in a world that is defined by the dollar standard. I don't think any single currency has dominated the world as this has in the last 400 or 500 years. So this currency, the dollar, is 70% of all trade around the world, of all currency transactions. Now the problem is the US discovered shale. So they stopped buying oil from others, or as much oil. They started reducing the trade deficit, just at a time when foreigners had borrowed record amounts of dollars. And then the US started trade wars, which puts less dollars in the system.
With Bitcoin, you've created a network driven by behavioral economics, which is the network of money. And every participant gets rewarded by bringing participants in. So that creates an incredibly robust network effect. In fact, it's genius. Because more of us who believe in it, the more we attract other people in, the more we all get rewarded for it. So the behavioral incentive is extraordinary. And that is a way to gain adoption for a new money, because otherwise it's very hard to do. It's very hard to get adoption unless you get rewarded. But I wondered how you could value Ethereum, because I could start to see how I could value Bitcoin and why it is exponential, why we have to use log charts. It's because the network effects of more people mean that the chart is always exponential. And we've only just started. I mean, we've got billions of people to bring onto this. So this is going a lot further. As I talked about, I have no problem when I use, this log chart, for example. It would suggest potentially this rally could take us to 400,000, maybe even 1 million on an offshoot because of the wall of money that I've talked about as institutions come in. Maybe I'm not. Maybe Plan B stock to flow is right and it gets out 288. I don't know. Doesn't really matter right now, but I think be surprised because that's network effects go more exponential over time. But when I looked at Ethereum, the thing I was told not to look at, I realized that not only was the technology very interesting, and yes, it has problems, and yes, it's very different to Bitcoin, and in fact, it's not even a competitor to Bitcoin. It's just part of a new digital asset ecosystem. I realized that Ethereum was actually probably the basis of the Internet of Value. And the Internet of Value is something hard to get your head around as well. I'll talk a bit about it later, But basically, anything that you exchange that has value is going to be digitized. And Ethereum is breaking the ground for that. Now, there's the Ethereum 2.0 coming out, which actually hardens it as a platform and lowers the supply and speeds it up and probably cheapens the cost. There are, it is not perfect. Like, Bitcoin is not perfect for certain things. There is a massive ecosystem also being built in layer 2 solutions. And Ethereum has layer 2 solutions too, but it's also able to be changed, which is not Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is this hard, super wonderful asset of money. Ethereum is not that.
We had the liquidation event to start with. That was the panic. The financial system froze up. The Fed needs to inject liquidity. All the central banks around the world. Oh my God, our banking system won't function. Money markets won't function. And we need to help all the people who've lost income. Phase 1. Phase 2 is the hope. Oh, we've given money to people who need income. We've injected the liquidity. And the rate of virus expansion is now falling. And we should get more mobility. And that's going to be a rebound. That's the hope phase. I think we're pretty much completing that as we speak. The question is what is the next phase? We either return to normal in some slow way, which the market is pretty much priced. When you have a huge amount of outstanding debt and reduced cash flow, I don't think growth goes back to normal.
Bitcoin then suffered a tremendous bear market, and then I bought in again. So if you go back to this narrative that I've been telling you, the global financial system is broken. People are not able to participate. The only answer the central banks have for this mess, so everybody takes on more debt. The only way the central banks have to try and keep this ship going and not sinking is printing more money, which is making the situation worse. So then the moment happens when it's a pandemic as well. So like, this is the worst case, right? This is going to cost everybody gazillions. And Bitcoin collapsed as everything collapsed. And I'm like, this is the opportunity, because the only outcome is gigantic printing of money. And that is and Bitcoin, with its scarce supply and its answer for the future financial system, this is its time. So I went all in and I shouted from the rooftops in as many places as I could to say, this is your opportunity. Here's your life raft to get out of this mess. All my old clients and friends from the macro world are now living in this new world. Virtually none of them are left in macro, because the returns are so big, the opportunities, the ability to be optimistic and not pessimistic, while keeping one eye on the kind of burning city of the old, which is the old financial system, but going into this new beautiful world. It's discovering a bit of the Americas all over again. And it sounds hyperbolic, but it's not. I think it's going to be the largest redistribution of wealth in all recorded history in the shortest period of time.
Currency world is a relative world, and there's a supply and demand issue. And we live in a world that is defined by the dollar standard.
Because otherwise it's very hard to do. It's very hard to get adoption unless you get rewarded. The global financial system is broken. People are not able to participate. And Bitcoin collapsed as everything collapsed. And I'm like, this is the opportunity, because the only outcome is gigantic printing of money.